Live from the Cactus Creek at Ibri, he is the king of prime time, Ghana's undisputed entertainment laureate, and still the youngest old man in Ghana. Put your hands together, show some love for the indefatigable KSM.
The KSM Show.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, my goodness. Thank you. So good to be here this evening. We're coming to you live from the Cactus Creek. Show some love. Oh, my God. Charlie, when you're talking to a Ghanaian, he says, hey, Charlie, 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 Charlie. When you hear Charlie like more than 3 times, Asamoah, eh? Hey, Charlie, 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 Charlie. Stop, 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 stop. Why am I saying this? Tonight, my guest, Charlie, 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 Charlie. So, my guest this evening, I am so excited about. I think I first spoke to him some years back, but it's here tonight. And let me tell you, this guy, by all standards, is a world-class legal brain, man. Show some love, man. Woo! Man! It's funny, I was talking to some of his people who know him, just to give me some few ideas what they think about this gentleman. They're like, hey, wabio, 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 wabio. That's all I heard. Wabio, wabio, wabio. But I also know some stories of this man. And I usually don't do this. I never tell the story before they come on. But this story, I must tell you before he comes on. When I finish the story, I will introduce him. I'm sure you know already, but I'm in found. Check this out. You know, this man, legal brain of the highest order. At one point, you know, we were calling him the financial wizard and all. Do you remember? Yeah, then show some love, man. Yeah, it's very interesting, you know, because you see this man, you know him to be this brilliant brain, and then you go behind the man and you realize, Charlie, this man, Charlie, when it comes to being down to earth, you know Fitamo. Let me tell you a story, man, and this is a secret. He doesn't know I know this, but I'm telling the story, and when it comes, I'll ask him. There was this time that this man, Charlie, Ghana for Kwamgase, he was rapping this beautiful lady, and I caught, you know, the priest caught him, but you know, and the lady had a complaint. Actually, this man, I don't sort of see the romance. We don't go out, we don't date, Papa Bia, and was always complaining. And then one time the man said, "Listen, today we are going out on a date. Show some love, man." Yeah, today we are going out for a date. And guess where he took her? Osu Night Market. I kid you not. I didn't get up. They went to Osu Night Market to go and hang out. Can you see two sitting at Osu Night Market, you know, having their kenke and fish and talking deep intellectual stuff, man. Oh, man. Now you've heard enough from me. I'm going to introduce this man. Put your hands together like you've never done before. Show some love for my good friend, Tsatsu Chikata. Please. Show some love one more time. Tsatsu, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. You've been talking to some dangerous people.
Oh, not quite dangerous.
I feel that. I can feel that. And you've been hearing some secrets.
You hear some secrets. When I come back, I want to ask you a secret. But now that we're here, we're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, folks, you know, this show is called Let's Chat with Tsatsu. That's the name of this show. Let's Chat with Tsatsu. When we come back, I'll tell you why we have that title. So stick around. When we come back from this break, what will we do? We'll be chatting with Tsatsu. Stick around, we'll be right back.
The KSM Show. The KSM Show.
We're back, and as I said before the commercial break, This is called Chat with Tsatsu. And first of all, before I start, let me thank Amma Pratt, because this is a slot, but we had such a hot guest, Charlie. When I told Amma, I said, oh, you can have my spot to do your KSM special. So Amma, thank you so much for, show some love for Amma, man. Show some love for Amma. So we're back, and we are calling the show, Let's Chat with Tsatsu. Do you know why? Because I promised him to come back. This show, we are going to see the man Tsatsu. We are going up close and personal with my good brother here. And you all know that the verdict is coming out soon, I think in a few days' time. After the verdict, he has promised to come back. And yes, so and you know the name of that show? It won't be Chat with Tsatsu. It will be Tsatsu in the witness box. Tsatsu in the box, man. I'll be cross-examining him, but that's part 2 of the show. This one, let's chat to Tsatsu. Tsatsu must send one. Welcome to the show, man. Show some love for him one more time. Tsatsu.
By the way, what a wonderful setting you have for this show.
Thank you.
I feel at ease. It's a haven, and I'll be back.
You'll be back. Put your hands in your hands. Oh, that is fantastic. Well, welcome to the show, and I'm sure you heard my introduction. And before I start anything, I'm not going to say, Christian, you're crazy. You have Tsatsu on the set. You won't ask him solid, heavy intense. You're going to ask him about Osu Market, but that's something. This night market story that I heard, is it true?
But that's the reality of the life of a bachelor boy. Osu Night Market is actually a very important location for ensuring one's, well-being.
Oh, wow.
I used to go to Osu Night Market. In fact, I have a favorite kenke seller in the Osu Night Market who I go to regularly. And she has fantastic fish as well. Her fish is really...
So there's a specific seller that you go to?
I'm telling you. And so naturally, and I don't know why you're getting into my very personal life just because we're up close and personal. But it is a fact that in order to impress some people, I have taken them along to go and see this wonderful kenke and fish person.
At the night market?
At the Osu Night Market. But what is even more amazing about it, and I think in the end, this is what saved the situation for me. Apart from the wonders of her food, I got to find out that this lady, through her night market work, had educated her daughter. And one day when I went there, she actually introduced her daughter to me and said, she's in Legon, And maybe by now she's even a lawyer.
Really?
And she may well be the next Supreme Court Justice. but truly, I mean, I've always found Osu Night Market a very refreshing spot for meeting my culinary expectations. So I try to impress some people also by taking them there. But let's not get too much into that.
Is she still around? I'm wondering.
Unfortunately, I've lost track a little bit because these days, not just because of Corona and so on, but being no longer a bachelor boy,
yes.
I now have home-cooked food.
Yes.
And frankly, even when I was in prison, I was getting home-cooked food every single day because my wife insisted that I have to eat home-cooked food. Even in prison.
I will be getting to that. We'll be getting to that, man. Shut up, man. When I heard the night market story, I was like, so, I don't know. Blown up. Hey.
Actually, it's not only Osuna. I used to go to Achimota as well. Achimota,
really? The night market.
There's also a night market there where the kenke
is
very good.
You like kenke pie?
Well, if I don't have akpo and fetridachi,
There you-
then kenke is a good enough substitute.
Understandable. So is that Osuna market or Achimotana market?
I think Osu is my favorite, to be honest. Yeah,
mhm,
Osu is my favorite.
Wow.
And
No, Osuna market, Charlie, you can't, because long ago, back in the day, it was my joint too, man.
there you go. There,
Oh.
But you didn't confess that earlier.
But I didn't go to the Kenke stand though. You know where I went?
No.
Domedo.
Oh, okay. That's on the right hand side.
Oh, you know there. Oh, wow. That is great, man. But honestly, you know, it's very interesting, you know, because when people are in the limelight like you and, you know, it's hard to imagine them again as well. People who do what normal people do, you know. So, in fact, when I heard that Osuna Market was your hang-up, you know, it was refreshing to know. But now you eat at home.
Yes,
Good
now I
for
eat
you.
at home.
Chachu, welcome again.
Thank
And we said, let's chat with Chachu. We are just shooting the breeze, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much we can say about you and so much we can talk about. So let's just go, man.
You know, I mean, I started off by acknowledging the beauty of your surroundings and so on. And I think that is very important, you know, for me, because one has to acknowledge, you know, what God has put us in, you know, the setting that God has put us in. And I find that I really am excited every time it's like David in, you know, Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory, you know, of God. And he always has to give an acknowledgement to God in terms of when he sits at or when he meditates or, you know, on his surroundings and so on. So I'm feeling quite excited, not just to be here, but I'm also feeling quite excited to be able just to chat, as you said, in a kind of normal way. Maybe
Yeah,
people are
yeah.
too used to seeing me sort of in my wig and gown
Yes.
and all that sort of stuff, you know. Or some people have even been used to seeing me just in a lecture room, you know, in the past and so on. But, you know, I'm kind of normal.
Chachu without the wig and gown, man. This is Chachu, bare Chachu. I'm stripping naked. This is Chachu stripped. That'd be a nice headline.
That's a
no?
nice headline.
But let's go back a little bit, Chachu, because from little readings I've done, I hear you were like a whiz kid in primary school. Where do you go?
You know, I started off in Mrs. Sam's. Mrs. Sam's was like a nursery, well, not nursery, but it was an early school kind of context in which, you know, I started off. I've even forgotten one important thing. Before I went to Mrs. Sam's, there was Aditrom. Aditrom was a real nursery school. And once my older brother started going to school, I would follow him to school. Sometimes, you know, just insisting.
Just go and sit in class with him.
Exactly.
I'm going with my older brother.
Exactly. And so that's how I really started. But Mrs. Sam's was where we all really started, you know, proper school, as it were. And, you know, it was an interesting place. But very quickly, we moved to Accra Newtown Experimental School. And that's where we had a wonderful headmaster, Mr. Fosu Apia. I mean, you know, he spoke so well. And I remember all that from those early years because I think that was part of what really impressed me. We had a headmaster who you could see as a model, you know, the way he spoke, his stature, his bearing. And I remember he had his own children in the school. But unfortunately for those children, he was so hard on them.
Really?
In order to make the point to us, the rest of us, like, we better take.
I do this to my children.
What about you all? So it was a good discipline, you know, proper Equiapim Presbyterian discipline, you know.
I can imagine.
And so that was Accra Newtown Experimental School, and that was very formative for me because I made a lot of, you know, friends, a lot of, you know, people with whom I've grown up into Infancy Pyramid.
This is what I find interesting right here. as a kid entering school at that level, some of the things that impress you will probably be the Kenke allowance. You know, I mean, they're really basic things. But you, at that time, was looking at this headmaster, and that was sort of...
No, that really,
really?
it was unforgettable for me because
Wow.
I've had, in my experience of school, headmasters who made that impression, like in Fansfim, you know, F.L. Bartels, you know, that kind of stature, the way they spoke and so on. And indeed, from that early age, I was struck. He spoke excellent English.
Wow.
And Accra Newtown Experimental was one of these experimental schools where you were not allowed to speak local languages, you know, because we wanted to bring all the English in us, you know. And I think it was just because, you know, a lot of the work that was done in the educational system was in English anyway. So I think people wanted to ensure that there was a good grounding in English. And so having a headmaster like that, and then there were excellent teachers, by the way, that I also remember from those days. In class 6, we had a fantastic teacher. She had been a student in Wesley Girls. I mean, where else? And I think it was soon after Wesley Girls that she came to teach us in class 6, just when we were going to take common entrance. That was the thing about experimental school. You took common entrance in class 6.
Yeah. Before we get there, let me quickly ask this. Because I hear in your primary school you were like, every year they promoted you like 2 classes ahead of your class.
Well,
you started class 1, everyone come back.
No. I think actually it was really one major promotion. From class 3, I was jumped to class 4.
Okay.
So then I joined, you know, my older brother and other people from class 4. And then class 4, we went on to class 5 and 6, where we took common entrance. That was the whole. So instead of 6 years, which was what the rest of the, I did 5 years.
You did 5
for that experimental project.
But you did a common entrance as 9. You were 9 years old.
I did common entrance. Actually, I was 8 at the time. I turned 9 before I went to Infantsville. But when I did common entrance, I was actually 8 years old. And you know, I think that recently one of my contemporaries told me a story which I had long forgotten. The people in Fanspim, after they had marked our papers and so on, they invite us for interviews. So we were all invited for interviews at Row Road. In those days, they used to call it Row Road School, Kimbu School. And we all were there for interviews. Then, in the case of Fui and myself, they actually asked us to do a written exam again, because apparently they didn't believe that we had been the people who had taken those written exams and so on.
Scored that,
So,
it was that impressive.
they actually had us sit down
and write
and do written exams again before the oral interviews. And I had forgotten this until one of my contemporaries reminded me that you people, the rest of us, were doing oral interviews. They sat you down to write your exam again. So indeed, we wrote again, and so I guess they were satisfied that we were the people who had done the common.
Now that they have the evidence.
They have the evidence. Yes, and then so that's how. So I got in Fansfim in January 1960.
And you were 9 years old?
Yes, I turned 9 in October.
Okay.
And so January, I was in Fansfim, you know, little boy. And the beauty of being that little is that everybody protects you and takes care of you. So none of this bullying stuff, you know, that they do on other people.
So there's a lot of bullying, but
a lot of bullying, but
you're so small.
They didn't
say,
touch me.
This guy,
you know, all the
protection.
seniors, you know. And the other aspect of it was that in those days, I was quite asthmatic, and I still am asthmatic. But in those days, one of the asthma medications was asthma cigarettes. Asthma cigarettes which you inhale, and that sort of helps clear, you know, the system for asthma.
Really?
So I became a favorite, even to some of the, you know, the bad boys in school, because they saw that I was the only person who was allowed to smoke officially. So occasionally they would come for a stick of my asthma cigarette in the hope that if they are caught smoking, they will say that I'm
an
also, I'm also smoking asthma cigarettes. And just like Tsatsu is
Really?
allowed, me too.
So
I'm
you
allowed.
liked it and all, and it's actual smoke?
Yes, actual smoke.
Really?
And I was the only person that had authorization to smoke.
to smoke.
in school. Because of asthma.
You became their friends.
I became their
'Cause-
friend. Absolutely. They
Wow.
needed my asthma cigarettes to show that they also had asthma. But it was again, it was a fantastic situation for me because I was mentored by, older people. I mean, there's seniors that I remember who took care not only of me in terms of my health situation, but were interested in my development.
In a way, I guess they were impressed too that such a small, tiny little person. What was the age group, the average age group of the?
About 12.
About 12,
yeah.
yeah.
My mates tended to be about 12. Some were even a little older.
Yeah.
But about 12. But I was 9. Fui was 11. So, he too was
So you're
younger.
this cute little boy that everybody wanted to take care of, and that saved you from the bullies.
It saved me.
Plus your
My asthma cigarettes also. And I mean, the thing that I was pointing out about being mentored, we had, prefects in my house then. I was in Bama House. I mean, prefects like Joyata, Kobe Hunter, and people. I mean, they were concerned that this little boy should really begin to develop the capabilities that he was at Infant Spring School for. Because, I mean, they knew that, that's the school. I mean, it's not a village, it's a school.
It's the school.
And so they really wanted me to fit in very well, not to be, bothered and, affected by my health situation and so on. And I remember, I mean, sometimes when I really had to get to hospital, I had to get some attention because of asthma, some of these seniors would actually take me to Cape Coast Hospital. I remember a senior, Mate, and I remember it so well because by the second term, my health was a little bit of an issue, and the headmaster, the great F.L. Bartels at that time,
Yes.
thought that I couldn't make it. So he actually called for my father and had a discussion, a serious discussion with my father.
Like you should be sent home.
Absolutely. He said, I'm suggesting that this, little boy should stay at home for 1 year and come back after the year. So this was my headmaster and my father conspiring against me. And so when I was informed by my father, I said, no way, I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue because, in 1960, there were actually 2 terms because the school year changed to September. So we're going to go into Form 2 in October. And so, they were concerned that I wouldn't make it. If I just continued and went into Form 2, second term, I'd been in hospital on and off and so on. So, these were legitimate concerns of these, grown-up people who cared about me. But I defied them, and I decided that I would go on to Form 2, And I remember telling this story to F.L. Bartels on his 98th birthday. He was visiting Ghana when he turned 98.
Wow.
And a number of, old school people had a lunch for him. And we were all supposed to say a few words. And my few words to him were just to remind him that I have the distinction of having defied him. And my father. Him and my father.
Did he remember?
Of course he remembered.
Amazing memory.
He remembered because
yeah.
he also was, like I said, one of those people that really made an impact on me because, I mean, F.L. Bartels, not only did he speak English with, the Queen's English proper, but he would speak Fanti also very well. He was a cultured person in every sense of the word. And so it was just a delight, school assembly. you know, I mean, he would be speaking his English and then he would break into some fancy to explain something,
Wow.
you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, he carried us with him in an impressive way.
Mm.
So to be able to defy such a person, my goodness, at 9, you know, I was proud of that, and I was able to remind him about it when he was 98.
And you, oh my goodness. It's very interesting that how you entered secondary school at such a tiny age,
Yes.
and you're a tiny little thing. You got all this attention from the seniors and everything. And I think you carried that through university as well. Because you entered law school at 16.
I was 16. I was 16 when I went to Legon. And again, you know, I had wonderful mentoring, you know. People like Professor Fuswama, he wasn't a professor then, he was a senior lecturer then. But he sort of, for instance, took me under his wing. You know, people like Kofi Deyanan, you know, people like Dr. Thomas Mensah. And these were lecturers who, you know, decided that they would sort of take me in hand and really give me access to their books. I could borrow from their library at home or in their office because I was curious. I was eager to learn. I was eager to read about all these cases and to analyze them and to engage in debates about them and so on. And I think once they saw that keenness, they were very happy
with it.
to,
Yeah.
you know, take
Yeah.
me on. And
No,
really-
I'm just bringing it up, you know, because I'm looking at you now, and this is telling me a story that as early as childhood, really, you seem to have a fascination for role models. You know, small boy, you have just started kindergarten, and you're looking at how your teachers. That's weird, man.
Well,
what is it
you
about
know,
it? I mean,
I
it must have
don't-
something to do with your upbringing. Did your
That is true. You know, my parents, I mean, I suspect that my father would have been a better lawyer than I am.
what
I
was
ever
he?
got
What
to
did he
be.
do?
My father worked for the UAC. He
Okay.
became a textile sales manager for UAC.
Mm-hmm.
And he was somebody who took education so seriously and wanted us, his children, to make the best of education. He and my mother made every sacrifice for us to take our schooling seriously. My mother was our home teacher from when we were young. I mean, she had been a pupil teacher herself. She gave up her, you know, ambitions for further education and so on
To stay home
to stay home
and teach your children.
and teach us and also look after the home. I mean, my mother was, you know, an extraordinary. She's alive still by
How old is
God's
she?
grace. She's 95 going on to
95.
96.
Wow, show us some love, man.
And
Wow.
And I mean, I think that she has been the real sort of anchor, especially since, you know, my father died, you know, and
How old were you when you lost your father?
my father died in 1981, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, by then I'd come back from, you know, my postgraduate studies and so on, and I was teaching in Legon.
Okay. No, we'll get there, but I just have to bring this up because, you know, when we see who you are now I'm beginning to understand, you know. First was the upbringing at home and made important to you people who had certain moral standards, some kind of standards, as early as
Yes, moral standards, and also, I mean, people, you know, who had striven to, you know, get somewhere. For instance, my uncle, who really, I guess, was the person who fascinated me into law.
I was going to ask that.
Justice
Yeah.
Apalu.
Justice Apalu is your uncle?
Yes, my uncle. You know, he's actually my mother's first cousin, but they were like brother and sister because my mother was born in Lagos, where her mother had been a trader and so on. But my mother, you know, was then brought to live with her aunt by her own mother. And her aunt, that is my uncle's, you know, mother, you know, took her as her own daughter. And so the two of them grew up thinking that they were actually brother and sister. And so there was always a closeness between them.
Okay.
And so when we got to know that my uncle had come back from doing law in England and he started practicing and we started interacting with him, his family and so on, you know, that was the initial fascination about law, you know. You know, I'm talking about when I was 5, 6, 7.
Wow.
In that
It's
time.
getting great. Let's hold it right there because we have now got to where your fascination about law started.
Yes.
So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, more of talking and chatting. We'll be right back.
The KSM Show.
We're back. We're back, and yes, the show continues. We are chatting with Tsatsu. Before I put him in the box, we have to chat, man. But we took a break just when we were getting into your whole interest, how it began, and I'm thinking. So you're from originally Qatar, eh?
I was born in Qatar.
You were born in Qatar,
Yeah, I was
okay.
born in Qatar, and again, my mother tells wonderful stories about, you know, all the neighbors and, you know, the people in the area at the time, because that's where she was staying whilst my father was, of
Okay,
course, working
okay.
outside. So I was born in Qatar, but very soon we came to live in Accra,
Okay.
because
okay.
my father was working with UAC, and so he came to live in
Okay.
Accra.
Okay.
And by around that time also, as I was explaining, 5, 6, 7, my uncle had also just come back from
back,
England,
Okay.
you know, as a full-blown lawyer, you
Yeah.
know.
So what was it that was fascinating you about your uncle as a lawyer? What do you remember particular triggers that
Well,
that
you
caught your
know,
attention?
I wouldn't say there were particular triggers, but I think that, you know, just the way he carried himself, you know, as a respectable, you know, gentleman. And, you know, the idea of, you know, even though in those days I didn't know about people calling them learned friends and all that, but, you know, he looked learned, learned person. As I said, he had such a close rapport with my mother initially, and then also with my father, because, I mean, my father became a very close confidant of his throughout the years, not only when he was in legal practice, but when he became a judge and became Chief Justice and all that. So in many ways, in the long run, my father probably had a closer relationship with him than even my mother did. And that's why I say that my father himself would probably have been a lawyer if he'd had the opportunity in his career, because he also had that kind of, you know, interest in legal things, in learning, and in inculcating the need for learning in his children. So I think all those sort of elements came together, not in the sense of any specific triggers, but just the whole setting.
Package.
I mean,
It's like,
you know, I remember, for instance, going into the chambers which my uncle worked from, Omega House at Dabraka, you know. I mean, I remember going there and seeing how clients would be waiting to come and see him and so on. You know, so from
you
that
found all
age,
of those things
exactly,
exciting.
Exactly. All of that makes just an impression on a little boy, you know. And so by the time I did my scholarship interview for a UAC scholarship to go to Fansipim, I was already telling the interviewers that my aim was to be a lawyer and ultimately to be a judge.
That was your aim.
And I think those UAC interviewers, they really were a little bit startled by this little 8-year-old boy. You know, I think I turned 9 just before that interview in December 1959. Were you born there?
Oh, yeah. What do you mean? Yeah. 56.
So that's what I told them. Those were my ambitions, you know. And so when about 10 years later, I'd gone to the law faculty and, I'd done well enough to get a University of Ghana scholarship to go and study in Oxford. The USC people felt that they needed to celebrate that.
So we knew it. We said it long ago.
Exactly. So they actually had a cover of their in-house magazine.
Yeah, the Unicorn magazine.
Exactly. They had a cover which had my picture.
Yes.
And my picture was actually taken from something in Graphic, because Graphic published the fact that I got the first class at 18. I think Graphic even gave a wrong age at that time, which my father promptly corrected. But anyway, so that made a Unicorn front page as well. So, I made 2 front pages, Graphic and Unicorn.
Just thinking about this, at that age you wanted to be a lawyer, and you have turned out to be, Americans will say, a damn good lawyer, man. Show some love, man. But you have mentioned judge too. You didn't become a judge.
No, I didn't, and I'm quite glad I didn't become a judge, for the simple reason that I've actually moved in a number of directions, sort of not strictly in legal practice, but for instance in oil and gas.
I was going to get to that.
I've done a lot of work in oil and gas. We started off from the law angle, but it became a broader oil and gas industry international experience. And frankly, that has been the passion of my life in the last 30, 40 years. And it's been a passion. It's still connected with the law, and I still get a chance to do law things, in practice, as you know.
The whole legal framework for the oil and gas thing.
Right. I had a bit to do with that, in the 80s.
You're very humble. You have a bit to do with that.
In the 80s. and I think that direction, sort of slightly away from the law, but always having an ability to get back into it, that actually has been more exciting to me. And frankly, judges have a tough job, so I don't envy I don't envy them at all. No. I think the oil and gas and occasional.
So when that talk came, and you're getting deeper and deeper into oil and gas, the legal framework, oil exploration internationally, all that era, were you missing courtroom?
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, I was more of an academic lawyer to start with.
Okay.
My initial objective, after my boasting about wanting to be a lawyer and a judge to the UAC people to impress them, my initial focus was actually to be an academic lawyer. So when I went to Legon, that was the sort of direction also that my mentors were pointing me in, because after I got my degree, I was sent to Oxford, and K.O. Fusama actually took me literally by the hand. And, we went together, we traveled together. He took me to London first, and at that time, Dr. Mensah, who'd been dean of the law faculty but had moved to the International Maritime Organization, was in London. So again, we went to his place before we went to Oxford, and I settled into Oxford. By then I turned 19, and I got into the Oxford scenario as well.
Pardon my interjection, but I read someplace or heard someplace that at Oxford, during an exam or paper, you questioned, they had given you an exam and you questioned the basis. Tell me about it. I thought it was very...
When you're that little, you can also be a bit daring, And indeed, there was an occasion when I thought that something about the question, was not exactly what it should be. And the examiner, whom I called attention to.
So you went to the examiner, or you called the examiner?
Because the examiners were around in the exam room. And they acknowleded that.
So you told them that the question was wrong? Hey, answer me. Show us some love, man.
They acknowledged that there was, you know, a point in what I was making, and I should go ahead on the basis that I had pointed out to them. So
Wow.
I went ahead on that basis, and, you know, by God's grace, I got a first in Oxford as well.
Oh my goodness, that's. When I heard this, I said,
but you see, again, I have to emphasize something.
yeah,
In all this, it's not by anything of my own making. I mean, whatever talents I have, first of all, thanks to the Almighty. But also, you know, people, I mentioned Opuswama, Mr. Opuswama at that time, later Professor Opuswama. But at that time, Professor Kwapong, who was Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, Legon, he had come into an arrangement with Oxford University whereby there was a linkage between the law faculty and Oxford University. So in my final year, Professor Simpson came from Oxford. He became the dean of the law faculty, and that's how I got into Oxford. Now, not only that, but the person who was the chairman of the law faculty in Oxford, with whom Professor Kwapong had made that arrangement, that sort of combination between Legon and Oxford, was my tutor at Wadham College. So I had somebody who had an interest in me, not just as one of the regular students, but because of the relationship that Professor Kwapong had created between Legon and the Oxford faculty. He took an interest in developing that. That's how come later, you know, my brother Fui and other people, Kwamna Hoy and so on, also went to Oxford under the same arrangement. You know, I guess if I hadn't managed to keep it going, nobody else would have been allowed to follow. But it just tells you that, you know, a lot depends on factors that are not to do with your own making, but other people, you know, make a way for you. Other people create an environment, create a context within which you can thrive. And that's really my story as far as I can see it. I mean, these other people, I mean, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, somebody like Kofi Dayanan, who himself had been to Oxford and who was teaching in the law faculty. I mean, these were people who prepared me, as it were, so that even though I went there so young, and that was my first time of being outside Ghana, really, I settled in, and I wasn't intimidated, you know, whether culturally or intellectually, you know, because, I mean, if you come from a university with Professor Kwapong as Vice Chancellor, do you think you will be intimidated by anybody from Oxford or Cambridge? He had been there and he had done better than all the people there. So you get encouragement.
That tells me about the quality of education at one time, and we'll get to that. But
maybe we still have it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, but for now, for the youth there that are listening, you young ones growing, you young ones growing, I want you to listen to something here. You know, the importance of mentorship. You cannot disregard it. So please, Tsatsu, if you can kindly just, you know, this one direct, not to me. You're telling the youth of Ghana how important it is to identify mentors in life. What is it that they should look for in the mentor, and what like, because I'm listening to you, and from the earliest times that I can see, you had people that you admired and modeled your life, you know, and it's not happening too much these days.
Well, you know, I think the first point is from the point of view of yourself as a student, as a young person, as a child or whatever. I mean, you must have an aspiration that you link up with older people. You must look up to older people. You know, I think sometimes young people can be a little bit, you know, sort of the view that, you know, we can do it by ourselves. You know, we can, you know, we too have the, I mean, I don't know the word to use, but it's almost like they feel they can sort of, work their way through their
Yeah.
own capabilities or something. Frankly, I have never thought in terms of my own capabilities, because I've always recognized that whatever those capabilities are requires shaping. It requires shaping. It requires not only mentoring in a direct one-on-one sense, but it requires the creation of a framework for you to thrive. A framework, like I was saying, the framework of Accra Newtown Experimental School with a headmaster like that, the framework of Mfanspim School with a headmaster like that, and teachers like that. That kind of framework is very important. So when you have the opportunity in that framework, then you start relating yourself to individuals who also begin to show an interest in you because you are showing an interest in the work that they're giving you. You start making sure that you live up to whatever expectation they set for you. When I went to the law faculty, for instance, as I said, I was interested in borrowing books from all these lecturers because, when I was reading, from those books, I would then go back to the people who lent me the books and have a dialogue with them. So once you show an interest, then people can reciprocate in paying attention to you. And in the same way, of course, when I was a lecturer in Legon, there were people that I also took in hand because I saw them having an interest, and I needed to encourage that. So I think it's very important for us all as young people. I'm still a young man, by the way.
Yeah, show some love, man.
For us all, to see to what extent we can derive value. Let me tell you something very important. In my legal practice today, when I have the occasion to do a court case, a lot of work gets done for me by young lawyers. They are not seen, they are not out there, but a lot of work. There's a network of people that I know I can count on for doing research, for actually engaging in arguments with me. And of course, best of all, I have 3 other siblings who are lawyers. So being able to engage in a constant dialogue and so on, it sort of agitates your mind, and you can't be complacent. So when you're developing an argument and you have, your youngest brother, tear it to bits, even before you have brought it out, in public, then you can be sure that you shape that argument better. And I think that goes beyond the point about the mentoring, you see, because I'm saying that in any professional context, you should also gain the benefit of a network that is not just a network of, people, praise singers or people who just lap up whatever you say, but people who are prepared to take you on. So, it's reciprocal. You mentor some people, but in the end, they can begin to question you, to begin to take you on, to make sure that you sharpen, your perspective. Iron sharpeneth iron. And I don't have their permission, but I would have wished to name some of these young people, even in some of the recent arguments I've been doing in court. They provide me a lot of the material that I'm using. I can't by myself, generate all that stuff. It's humanly impossible.
And what I'm saying now is also in sync with somebody else told me. I think he worked at GMPC when you were there, and he said you used to actually give the younger ones there a chance to excel. You actually challenge them to make presentations. So this is in sync with what you're telling me.
Absolutely. One of my joys when I was head of GMPC was we had these really sharp young people, geoscience, geophysics, geology, economics, finance, all these sharp guys, and engineering and so on. And we'd go to these meetings with all these big companies, you know, big names, you know, Amoco, you know, Arco, BP, this and that. And these guys I was working with were probably in their late 20s, you know, early 30s or so. I wasn't much older, but I was ahead. And I would just sit back and have them make the presentation because I'm no geologist, they are the geologists.
Yeah.
And they would blow the minds of these international companies. And I would sit back and enjoy it. And for me, that was really one of the defining features of what we try to do with GMPC. As a national institution, we wanted to make sure that we had a caliber of people who knew more about Ghana's geology as far as oil and gas is concerned than anybody else in the world. So that when they go to a presentation, no matter what the company they are talking to is, they stand out and people can literally applaud them. And that's what needs to happen.
Wow.
And I'm glad to say some of them subsequently have become
Yes.
top ranking
Yes.
management
And look,
people.
I won't mention his name, but he won't stop talking about you. But how you used to actually give them the chance to actually make presentations at levels that they would not even have dreamt of.
Right.
Wow.
Well, the truth is, I couldn't have made those presentations.
So you let them go.
So, I mean, you know, all this finance stuff and so on. I mean, there were some really sharp people. I mean, I'm excited about the potential of this country in terms of human resources. That's been my excitement from the time I was teaching in Legon and so on, even before teaching, you know. And it remains my excitement. And I don't know how we harness all that to be more productive than we currently are. But that's another story.
That's another story.